Don't stick your booty in my face. Hi everyone, it's Holly and I'm back with my August wrap up. Naturally, I went and got my hair done yesterday, so my blue is touched up, and I took a nap when I got home instead of, you know, filming a video while my hair was nicely professionally done. But that's fine. Anyways, so normally I do my wrap-ups just in the order that I read them, but I decided to try something different this month, and I'm trying to like clump my books together. I'm still gonna do the like buy, library, or skip. In the month of August, I read 20 books, so I DNF'd 2 books, but I finished 18. But I was pretty substantially into those DNFs, so I'm counting them as books read. I just don't rate them, but I will talk about them a little bit. Don't stick your booty in my face. And then for ratings, I had 4 3-star books, 9 4-star books, which is amazing, and 5 5-star books. So no 1 stars, no 2 stars. So I figured I would start with the DNFs. So first, I'll be nicer and I will talk about Throwaway, which I'll insert a picture somewhere. And this was on my summer TBR. I have had this book for like almost 10 years. It came out in 2010. It was, no. Seriously, every time I film, I was editing today a bunch of videos, and in like every editing, I'm like, no, don't do that. No, what are you doing to my cat? But I don't want to like lock him up, like put him in the bedroom or whatever. Plus his food and his litter box are out here, whatever. Anyways, this was a free ebook, and I got it like right when I first got my Nook, which was a graduation present in 2011. So, you know, I just went on like the Barnes & Noble Nook store and just like downloaded all of the ebooks that I could, right, for free. So I had a job. Actually, I did have a job, but I made like $7.25 an hour. So I bought this. So it's been on my TBR for a long time, so I finally read it. It's contemporary romance. It's definitely a little on like the darker side. So the heroine is a prostitute, which I find fascinating. I love reading about characters like that, whether it's modern day prostitutes or courtesans or whatever, in like historically. I just think it's often a criticized and maligned person, so I like being able to read about them. I ended up DNFing this about 75 pages in. The writing and the dialogue just felt really immature. Like the way this woman would talk to like the hero character, he was a cop, it just felt very childish. I don't know, I didn't like it. I'll try to talk a little bit more about this in my summer TBR wrap-up video. So then we'll get to the one that I DNF'd that I'm like the most petrified to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it, 1, because I read like over 150 pages of this book. 2, I talk about it in my Reading Rush vlog, which should be up soon. It's really long, so it's taking me a while to edit it. So I wanted to address the fact that I ended up not completing it. And also I've read a lot of reviews on Goodreads, and other people did have the same problems as me, but mainly what I see on BookTube is a lot of like raving, and I'm not saying that those people don't love this book, I'm sure they do, but I want to tell you that I did not like this book, so that if you also don't like this book, you're not alone. And that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So this is, I thought this was YA. It is not. It is new adult, which is fine. I don't know if I didn't know what I was going into. Again, totally cool. And I read new adult, I read romance, it's not a problem. Or if it was marketed incorrectly to me. I don't know. It is a male-male romance between the President of the United States' son and one of the princes of England. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about why I ended up DNFing this and why I didn't like it. I talked through a lot of my confusion in my Reading Rush vlog, and there are tons of Goodreads reviews that if you just go search like the 1 and 2 star reviews, most likely you're gonna see people that feel the same way I feel, and they're more eloquent than I am, so read their reviews. Mostly, I felt this book was trying so hard in so many ways that it just came across forced and unnatural. I really wanted to like this, and I'm really sad that I didn't. If you do like this, then keep an eye out, because this is like a brand new book. I mean, I can go donate it to Goodwill, but I may end up just doing like a giveaway or something for this. And if you want more detailed feelings on this, let me know, and if there's like enough desire for it, then I will film a like discussion video around it. Because it's been like a solid month since I put this down, probably more than that, and I am still thinking about this book. So then let's talk about the nonfiction that I read in the month of August. So first is a physical book, and it is Catching Lightning in a Bottle. I talked about this in my July wrap up a little bit, or my July book haul a little bit. This is freaking huge. It's very heavy. You could seriously hurt somebody with this. I ended up giving this 4 stars, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. This is about the founding and history of Merrill Lynch. It goes from the founding of Merrill Lynch and like a little bit about the founders, like their history, Merrill and Lynch, into about 2007, 2008, when Bank of America was bought out by, or like bought Merrill Lynch. And this is written by somebody who worked at Merrill Lynch for over 20 years, and he is the son of one of the like sort of founding partners of Merrill Lynch. So Merrill Lynch's real name is Merrill Lynch. Thank God that didn't fall on my toes. Its real name is Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner, and Smith. The name changed like 50 million times, and he is the son of Smith, as his name is Winthrop Smith Jr. I had to read this for work. Actually, if we read this, although it ended up not being if we read it, but it's fine. It was a good book. I actually got it on Audible. We got out of a training at work, and I will try to insert footage of what we did instead of going through our training. It was pretty fun. So, you know, but it was a good read. It's just really, really long. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, so, but if you are interested in like business history or financial history or anything like that, then I would recommend it. If you are interested in stuff like that and you have other recommendations, let me know, because I found this really interesting, and I'm super into like weird random history right now. Like I love reading about, I just requested like 20 books at my library because I'm really into, I like learning about things that you don't always talk about. So like Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, those are big corporations, but I feel like you don't talk about this. And he goes into detail. He covers like every CEO up through 2007. So those are people like I don't know and stuff. And so I think that's interesting personally. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to leave those below. I need to talk a little faster. So then the rest of the books that I read were also audiobooks, but I got them all from the library. So I read Deep Work by Cal Newport. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I got this because a YouTuber I watch, which he runs like his own company. So it's Matthias. So he used to have the Matthias channel, and his company, is that like a shadow? But what is the shadow from? But he runs High Five Studios, and for a while he hasn't been doing it lately, so I don't know what's going on. But he had a channel where he was talking a lot about like the business aspects and like what he was doing, and he went through in one of like the early videos his like books, I guess, that he talked about and recommended, and this was one of those books. So it's nonfiction. It's kind of like a self-development read. It is interesting, and it has some good work. Like he talks about making sure you're like separated from distractions and you're really able to focus on the stuff that really requires your focus. But I do find it's really hard to universally apply, which even he acknowledges, and he talks about things that you can do Like I was like, oh, this would be great for my job. It definitely is something I could apply to like the YouTube aspect of my life. But I would love to apply it to my job, because sometimes I feel like my job and my coworkers and I are not as efficient as we could be. However, we also have the issue of we get phone calls in, like, and you never know, it's not like a call center, although that's a whole nother thing, because that's what I used to do. But so you never know when somebody's gonna call in, what they're gonna need, how urgent it's gonna be. And so you can't, like, I try to like block my time, so I'm doing like more shallow, less like brain heavy work and stuff. So I think it has merit, but it's not something I really feel like is going to change my life or I need to read again. I would recommend picking it up from the library. So then I listened to a book called How to Be Yourself by Ellen Hendrickson. I ended up giving this 4 stars. This is also a nonfiction, like self-help, self-development book. It talks a lot about dealing with anxiety, which I suffer from. She uses a ton of examples to like contextualize her thoughts and her advice. So she is like a therapist or a psychologist, I don't know, I'm sorry. So she uses examples, either real examples from actual like clients where she's like changed the names, or like amalgamations where she's like put client stories together kind of to like create a story, a narrative. I definitely want to try some of her tips. I think she had really good advice that was easily achievable for somebody with anxiety, although sometimes this book gave me anxiety. I don't know if I'm the only person that feels this way, but reading these self-help books about anxiety give me anxiety. And I feel like that's crazy. It's not like super bad. Obviously, like I would stop reading if it was like really damaging to me, but it is something I've noticed. Some of the things she's talked about I've already read about in my own life, or like in books, or things I've already noticed about myself, or tips that I've already done. Like she talks a lot about this idea that like you'll do or say something in front of people or a person, and you'll like freak out about it, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, they think I'm so weird, I can't believe I said that, I can't believe I did that. And then you dwell on it and you think about it forever, and then in reality that other person either just doesn't notice, or they don't think you're weird, like when they do notice. Like they probably are too self-centered, in like, not in like a bad way, but like to have noticed what you did. And like around the time I was reading this, like this exact situation happened to me at work, and then I actually like made a follow-up comment about it to somebody, and the guy was like, no, like whatever. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember. Obviously it's really hard to put into practice, and it's something that you really have to work with in your mind, but it is important to remember those things. Did I say I would recommend picking that up from the library? And then the last nonfiction book I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I gave this 4 stars. This is another nonfiction, like self-development, self-help book. I picked up the audiobook from the library. This I picked up, the lady I listened to for weight loss, she talks about this book a ton and really recommends it. I really liked it. So it's really about making small, like minuscule, one could say atomic changes in your life, like at the size of like an atom, in order to kind of like compound your life to make those changes and then have them like continue on. And I really like that idea, and he presented his ideas and this advice in a very clear way. I do feel like I need to listen or read this again and take notes, because a lot of times I'm listening to my audiobooks in the car or while I'm like shopping or something, so I don't have that ability. And so I'm probably gonna buy the physical copy, and then I might get the audiobook again and try, and just because I like consuming my nonfiction through audio, but then be able to like take notes in the book so that I can fully apply his advice to my life. And I would recommend picking up this from the library, even though I said I'm gonna buy it, just to make sure that it works for you. So next, let's talk rereads. So first I reread When the Duke Returns by Eloisa James, which I gave 4 stars. And this is one of the books in her Desperate Duchess series. Did I write down which one? Book 4. And this is definitely my favorite in the series. I have read this multiple times. These two characters, the hero and the heroine, were married by proxy when they were like 12 and 16 or something. And then the hero kind of like goes adventuring around the world. And he doesn't just do like your basic 1800s genteel male touring. He goes to like Africa and India, and he really tries to get to know like native people in all of these countries and like brings their knowledge and their way of life back with him. And so he's been traveling for like 10 years, and she finally gets fed up with this, and so she basically makes him come home. And he's really unorthodox. He doesn't fit into England. He doesn't want to fit in. He just wants to keep traveling and keeps meeting these other cultures and learning from them. Like he likes to run, which is totally not normal. And he dresses odd, like he wears clothes that are comfortable, because fancy that. And he believes in like modernizing and learning and implementing your knowledge. He is also a virgin, and I love a virgin hero. I think she is too, but that's not uncommon. And I just love it. And so throughout the story you see them, they're very different people. Like he just wants like a calm wife, like if he's gonna have one, because he doesn't want somebody to interfere with his adventuring. And it's not in like a mean way. Like sometimes the heroes mean that in like a mean way. Like he wants to be faithful and respectful. That's why he's a virgin still and everything. But she's Italian, and so everyone thinks she's like hot-tempered, and she is, and she's very stubborn, and she speaks her mind, and she doesn't want to be like this peaceful wife. So throughout the whole story you see them like pushing each other and to like be better people and to question who they are. And then they also learn to be a couple, and they learn the emotional part of being a couple and the like intellectual things, like they learn from each other, and then they also learn sexually. And I love that. Like I love that you see this couple and they're both like unsure, and you know, like she doesn't like orgasm like the first time that they have sex, and I think that that is amazing. I read this for the first time in college, and I just remember reading it and being like, thank you, like that is so realistic and needs to happen more. So yeah. And then I'll talk about the 3 other rereads really quick together because they're kind of related. And this video is going to be long enough as it is. So I listened to Addicted After All by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is the final book in the Addicted series, so the final book about Lily and Lo. And then I listened to Kiss the Sky and Fuel the Fire, which these two are about Rose and Connor. And this is probably not the order I would ever recommend reading these books. I would definitely recommend reading them in publication order, but I'm reading them for my reread in like couple order. Addicted After All got 5 stars. Again, it's a beautiful book. I love it. Kiss the Sky and Fuel the Fire both got 4 stars. I love Rose and Connor as characters, and I find them very interesting, but they're just not my favorite couple, and they're not my favorite people to read about. I think they're a certain kind of taste. And so while I love them, I don't like 5 stars love them or anything. And I will say with Hot House Flower and Fuel the Fire, I wasn't 100% on board with the audiobook narrators. They made a couple weird choices, mainly with like inflection. Like the characters would say something and I would think that the tone should have been different, like what should have been placed in a sentence, and it wasn't, or it was just weird, and it happened multiple times. Also, Connor Cobalt is like the only character in the history of all books that I've like ever read in my life that I have a fan cast for. I will put a picture up of who I have fan casted for, and I'll try to specifically get a picture of him in a suit because, oh my gosh, I saw him in an he's from Leverage. I saw him in an episode of Leverage in a suit, and I was like, you are Connor Cobalt in that moment. And so ever since then, and I know like he does not fit the description of Connor Cobalt for obvious reasons, but I would die if that ever happened. I would love it. And because it's an actor and he's an actor from a show that's like my favorite show I've seen 20 million times, I'm very familiar with his voice, so it's hard to not see him as Connor. Oh, and I would recommend buying all 3 of those. I always recommend buying all Kristen and Becca Ritchie because it's all amazing. So then let's talk arcs. So I only read 1 arc in the month of September, and that was Crown of Coral and Pearl. I always want to say this title wrong. It's by Mara Rutherford. I think it's her first book. This is a YA fantasy. I gave it 4 stars, and it's book 1 in a series. I don't know how many books are going to be in the series. I'm kind of hoping only 2. I'm not sure there is enough story there for something more than that. And I just had to delete footage off of my SD card, so I have no idea. So this book follows, actually here, this one I will just read the synopsis for. And I've never heard anyone talk about this book, so a lot of these books I just assume you will have heard of. For generations, the princes of Alara have married the most beautiful maidens from the ocean village of Verenia. But though every girl longs to be chosen as the next princess, the cost of becoming royalty is higher than any of them could ever imagine, nor once dreamed of seeing the wondrous wealth and beauty of Alara, the kingdom that's ruled her village for as long as anyone can remember. But when a childhood accident left her with a permanent scar, it became clear that her identical twin sister Zadie would likely be chosen to marry the crown prince, while Noor remained behind, unable to ever set foot on land. Then Zadie is gravely injured, and Noor is sent to Alara in her place. To Noor's dismay, her future husband, Prince Saren, is as forbidding and cold as his home, a castle carved into a mountain and devoid of sunlight. And as she grows closer to Saren's brother, the charming Prince Talon, Noor uncovers startling truths about a failing royal bloodline, a murdered queen, and a plot to destroy the home she was once so eager to leave. In order to save her people, Noor must learn to negotiate the treacherous protocols of a court where lies reign and obsession rules. But discovering her own formidable strength may be the one move that costs her everything: the crown, Verenia, and Zadie. So I loved the relationship between the sisters, Noor and Zadie. Mara Rutherford really takes the time to like build and show that relationship so that you get really invested in it, because the story is told in one POV, and that is Noor's POV. The villain character is so interesting. I loved how she wrote him. Like, he would have these moments of humanity where you'd be like, oh, maybe he just, like, if he was raised in a different way, he would be better. But then you would also be like, is this real humanity or is this an act? And it was so creepy. Like, it just, which is a good feeling, I feel like, for a villain. There was some suspense. Like, I would get really anxious for Noor when she was in certain situations, which is pretty uncommon for first person POV, because, like, obviously the character's not gonna die, because who would tell the story then? The romance felt a little off, like almost insta-lovey, but I'll withhold complete judgment until I read the next book. And I really liked what she did with the world. Like, they literally live like on an ocean. It's not like they live on an island. They're not allowed to step on land, and the only person that can go on land is like the most beautiful girl who is picked to be the prince's wife. And so, like, she literally like struggles to be on land, and it's like different, and their culture is different because they grew up swimming and in boats and everything, and the way that their skin is, the way they dress, and all of that. And I loved that she took the time to kind of like build that out. So I really enjoyed the world. I really enjoyed the story. Like I said, I hope it's just a duology, one, because the world needs more of them, and two, because I'm not sure there's enough story there to write more than a duology. But I definitely want to check out the next book when it comes out next year, and I plan on buying this. This came out in August, but I plan on buying a physical copy in the next couple of months. And I would recommend you buy it as well. So then let's talk about the 2019 releases that I read. So I think this was like, it might have been a blogger I followed on Facebook talked about this. I picked up I'd Rather Not by Lainey Lynn Vale. I give it 3 stars. This is book number 3 in the KPD Motorcycle Patrol. So there is a ton of like characters and stuff that like I don't know because they were in other books. You can totally read it, it's fine, it's a contemporary romance, like you can still enjoy the romance, but I think there's a lot of other stuff in the world you don't fully understand because you weren't there for the other books. I had never even heard of this author before, and she has so many books. So it's about a girl named Oakley, of course her name is something like that, and she needs a kidney like ASAP, she's dying. And then the hero, Pace, was in the military. I can't remember what branch. And he is a double leg amputee from a attack. I think it might have been a bombing. So when he sees that, and he's like friends with her brother, when he sees that she needs a kidney, he's like, well, I'm already like broken, so whatever, she can have a kidney. So he donates her a kidney, which I'm like all about that life. So in two ways, I love stories like this that talk about like amputation and scars and body differences, and I think that's fascinating. And I also really appreciate a story talking about transplants. I'm like really passionate about organ donation and transplants, and especially like, not to go off on a high horse, because like on a tangent, because this video is long enough already, but kidney donations and like kidney needs, like we shouldn't have such a need for kidneys in our country, at least in the US, but probably in most countries. You don't need somebody to die in order to get a kidney. Like you need somebody to die in order to have a heart transplant and stuff like that. But a kidney, you can have a live donor for that. But the problem is people can't afford the medical and away from job expenses of giving up a kidney or giving up a part of their liver, that's another one, to somebody who needs it. And in our country, because of the way the laws are set up, which I understand to some extent, if like somebody even like offers to like help pay your bills for you, like so while you're like recovering, that's considered like selling an organ and you can get in trouble. And that's just really sad to me, and like so many lives could be saved if we thought about that differently. So anyways, I just really care about that. So these characters they're immediately attracted to each other. It's not insta-love, it's definitely like a mutual attraction, which I'm fine with. And they slowly begin to build a relationship with one another throughout their recoveries and everything. There are a ton of characters, like I said before. I was confused, but I think that's clearly because like I haven't read the other books. It's not like the writing. I enjoyed myself. I thought this was really fast-paced. It didn't require a lot of my time. But it was super dialogue heavy, which is not always my favorite, and it felt like it was kind of written too fast. And I don't mean like, some people are just really fast writers and that's fine, but I feel like almost like it was written and then it was like edited once and then it was like okay, and there wasn't like real big noticeable things. I just wish there could have been like more descriptions and more internal dialogue and that kind of stuff. And then I read The One You Fight For by Ronnie Lauren, which came out I think in January, and this is the third book in the Ones Who Got Away series. I gave 5 stars. Oh, I loved it. I think this is my new favorite in the series. It's contemporary romance. It is pretty dark. So this whole series it follows 4 friends who like 10 or 12, I think it's like 12 years earlier, they were involved in a school shooting that took place at their senior prom. And so now it's 12 years later and they're still dealing with that in various ways. The hero in this book, Shaw, he is actually the brother of one of the shooters, because it was like a shooter duo, which you don't see that often, I feel like, anymore. But it's very Columbine-esque, I guess. So like he changes his name and he tries to get away, and he feels responsible for what his brother did. Like he should have been a better brother. And then Taryn, our heroine, her sister was killed in the shooting, so she is dealing with that grief. The shooting and the loss of her sister really hurt her mom. Like her mom is dealing with a lot of trauma from this, and Taryn has gone on to become a psychologist, and she is really working to prevent school shootings. So a huge portion of this book is her trying to implement a system in schools, which actually, that system sounds fascinating, and I have no idea if Miss Lauren like used actual like research and everything to come up with that system, but I think it would be really interesting. It's a lot about like mentorship and early intervention and everything, and I think it would have potential. Their story is so beautiful. They both have a lot of baggage from the shooting, understandably so, and it's like they also have added drama of like a lot of people blame him and his family, like why didn't they do anything, like why didn't they stop his brother and all of this. So then like when she gets in a relationship with him, her friends are like so confused and all of this. It was so beautiful and heartbreaking though. I love this series. It tells a story about a great friendship. I love these 4 women. They're so different, but they're so supportive of each other. I can't wait for the next book to come out. I think it comes out on December 31st, and to see that character's story. I think this is my new favorite in the series, and it's an interracial romance, which is like one of my favorite things. If you think you can handle this content, I would highly recommend picking this up, buying it. Obviously start with the first one. Like you can read them independently, but I would just start with The Ones Who Got Away, and keep reading. They are totally worth it if you can emotionally handle this content. And then the other new release I read this year was Brazen and the Beast by Sarah McLean, which is the second book in her Bare Knuckle Bastards series. I gave this 5 stars. Yes. This is historical romance, and full disclosure, I am a huge fan of Sarah McLean. So I am just predisposed to love her stories. This is incredibly similar to Wicked and the Wallflower, which is the first book in this series. Like they have similar story arcs and everything. That did not bother me. I read a bunch of reviews on Goodreads and it seems to have bothered a ton of people. I didn't care. Hattie, the heroine, she is plus sized, which is nice, and she has like insecurities about it, but like it's not all she is, which I really liked. The hero Beast is great. He's definitely dark. This series definitely is a little on the darker side. Like he kind of is like lives in the slums, but he's like, you know, started from the bottom and now he's here, kind of a guy. I think that he's a very interesting character, and I really liked reading about him, and I liked reading their story. Sometimes their romance was a little repetitive, like they would have the same discussion over and over again, and I wasn't like the biggest fan of that, but it's fine. There was also a really minor storyline in here about some side characters that I want more of. I'm sure it will never happen. Maybe it's like a novella. I would love it. And I'm definitely excited for the next book. It's one of those ones where the hero is kind of been the villain this whole time, and so now he's going to be redeemed. And I know a lot of people are really upset about that and up in arms. And I remember with, what's it called? The Day of the Duchess, I think is what it's called, in her last series, was similar to that, and I was really apprehensive then, but I ended up liking that book and thought she did a good job, so I'm not worried at all. And I would recommend buying this. So finally, let's talk about the backlisted books that I read this month. So any of the books that I read that came out prior to this year. So first I'll talk about another historical romance, which is Beyond Scandal and Desire by Lorraine Heath. This is the current series that she is writing. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really liked it. I mean, I love Lorraine Heath. She's amazing. This is A Sin for All Seasons, novel 1. That was weird. So Mick, the hero, is a bastard and of a duke, and he really wants his father to acknowledge him. And Aslan, I don't know how to say her name, is a ward of that duke, and that duke and his wife expect her to marry their son. That's not this guy, you know what I mean? Heath is a self-made man, you know, he also started from the bottom and now he's here. I can't believe I keep quoting that because I hate Drake and that song, because you did not start from the bottom, Drake. you did not start from the bottom. But anyways, and she is a part of her revenge, so it's one of those storylines where like the guy is going to use the girl to get his revenge. I'm not the biggest fan of that storyline. It usually involves some lying, and I'm not a big fan of lying, but she did it well here. It was well paced, it was well developed with the characters and the romance. I can't wait to read more about Mick and his sisters. There was some emotional stuff in here that really got me. Also, she addresses in here this idea of, I think it's called baby farming. So noblemen would drop off their bastards to women, and like poor women, and sometimes those women would care for those babies and like raise them to be as their own, and other times they would just take them in and then like murder them. And that's awful and so horrible, and I can't believe that ever happened. And who knows how many innocent babies died because men would just sleep around and wouldn't take responsibility for their actions. I think that's awful. And so then I read, I finished up the Court of Five series. So I read Buried Heart by Kate Elliott. What do I say? What do I say? I gave it 3 stars. It's YA fantasy. I feel the same way I felt about the first 2 books. Maybe I'll do a video review of the series. I don't know. It had a lot of the issues that the previous books had. Jess, the main character, is so selfish. I don't think she ever really developed, like she does a little, I guess. Like you get to see in here she struggles with, because she's biracial. Who does she belong to? Like, what's the right choice? Should she be with her father's people or her mother's people? Which is an interesting story and is an interesting concept and everything, but it wasn't quite there, and I wish that had been a bigger part of the story earlier on in a lot of ways. The actual interesting characters to me, like Jess's mom, there's a guy in here, he's a poet. I think he's interesting. I think some of the villains are interesting. Her dad is interesting. I just think that it would have been nice. Her sisters, like especially 2 of her sisters in particular, are way more interesting characters and would have been much better to follow. And they didn't have nearly enough page time. This, I feel like, could have been better served in one of 2 ways, potentially combining these 2, is either as a multi-POV fantasy following a few more characters, or as an adult fantasy, so that I feel like she could have potentially gone further with some content, and that also could have made it a little better. I would recommend getting that from the library if you're interested in it at all. I also finished Their Fractured Light by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner, which is the 3rd and final Starbound book. This is young adult sci-fi. The first book is These Broken Stars. These have some of the most beautiful covers in the world. I'm not going to say much because it's the final book in a series. I thought it was a satisfying conclusion. It was a little slow, but it didn't bother me that much. I'm still confused by some of the sci-fi elements, but I'm unsure if that's the writing wasn't clear or I'm just like not smart enough. And I would recommend, honestly, I'd recommend picking this up from the library because I'm not sure it's for everybody. And then I read The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the first book in her Lux, no, that's a series that already exists, in the Origin series. This follows Luke, who is a character you meet in the Lux series, and the main character and narrator is Evie, who is a young girl. I give this 4 stars. So if you have read the Lux series, it follows Katie and then Damon, and Damon is part of an alien species, and this takes place after those books, and at this point in the story, the world knows about aliens now. The aliens are no longer hiding in secret. So this is definitely a Jennifer L. Armentrout book. Like, I don't think it's for everybody. The hero is a lot. He's very alpha. He's very like aggressive, which is not my favorite, but I don't mind when she does it. The heroine is really plucky and likable, and I like Evie a lot. The romance is nice. But it did drive me a little bit crazy. Like, the pacing of it was a little odd. What I really, really liked about this was the look at the aliens and them coexisting with humans, and kind of like the social implications of that. Like, there are groups of people who think, like, Evie goes to school with aliens, and there are people at the school who think that's awful. Then there's other people, so like the aliens have to like register, and the aliens are very powerful. Like, they are very powerful, which, so you understand why people would be scared of them, but at the same time, a lot of these aliens just want to live their lives. Like, they just want a safe place to be because their planet is gone. And so I just think that's really fascinating, and I think it's something you can easily apply to our world now in a variety of ways. So I thought it was interesting. And the next book is out in October. I would recommend picking it up if you like Jennifer L. Armentrout, or if you like maybe like a Wendy Higgins or something and you've never read a Jennifer L. Armentrout. You could read this independently of reading the Lux series, but I would highly recommend reading the Lux series first. And then the final book I have to talk about is probably one of my favorite reads of the month, and one of my favorite reads of the year, and that is The Bollywood Bride by Sonali Dev. I can't believe I have put off reading this, and a huge part of it was because so many people ragged on this book. And I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. I need to read A Bollywood Affair again, but that was a 4-star read for me, so I don't know. This is the second book in the series. They're like companion novels. It's contemporary romance. I just adored this book. I could not stop reading it. I can't even really explain to you what I loved about it. I was so moved by Rhea, the heroine, by her story, by her life. She goes through so much. She's a Bollywood actress, and she really does act so much in her life because of so much stuff that happens to her growing up, and I cried so many times. It was so heartbreaking, but so beautiful. The heroine, he's great. They were like childhood friends. They grew up together. They sort of had a thing when they were like 17, 18, and now they reconnect. And that story, like, it worked so well. Like, it wasn't just a reconnection. It was, they were driven apart. It's very persuasion-y to me. Like, actually, it is really persuasion-y, like, the more I think about it, which I always think of persuasion when I think of like reunited lover stories, but, or second chance romance, but like, he is really mad at her for pushing him away when they were younger, and like, and he should be, but like, and she does feel bad about it, and so he doesn't just like immediately forgive her. They have to work through that, and it's awesome. A huge part of this story, like why they come together, is because her cousin is getting married, and so that the wedding, like preparations and the actual wedding, are a huge backdrop to this story. And Sonali Dev just does a great job of including like food and eating and culture into a story to make it like come alive to you. And it's so easy to get a glimpse at this Indian or Indian American life, and she just makes that so real. She also made me incredibly hungry, but it's fine. I just love her writing, and I want to read the next book, but I don't want to read the next book because I read the synopsis and I'm not okay with what happens in that book. Not okay. If you want more information, see my written review. Hopefully my thoughts are a little clearer. Maybe not. I don't know. But those are the books that I read and or DNF'd in the month of August. I can't believe I read this many books. Again, if you stayed this long for watching this really long video, thank you so much. And I will see you next time. Bye!